Hi everyone. Okay, so we are going to do a mobility flow. This is an early class, this is a beginner's class. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down it into a few different phases today. So basically we're going to start with a simple warm-up that you should be doing before every flow really, which we can build and progress on as we go through different levels. We're going to work on a particular position today, which is like a fundamental position in the flow, which is called like a 4-point posture. And then we're going to sort of drill a few movements and a few exercises from that position. So it's something that you can practice throughout the week in this posture. And then we're going to basically try and add that into a little mini flow where we basically move from that posture into another position and then back again. And that'll be good for your first week if this is the first time you've done it. The idea being that each week we'll be posting a new flow and we'll be building and progressing through the weeks until you get to the point where you understand all the basic positions, you understand the transitions between those positions, and you can actually then start to create your own flows if you want to. That's absolutely cool. So you can follow the flows that we provide each week, and after a while you can get really creative yourself and you can start to design your own flows. And the great thing about that is depending on what you need for your body, depending on whether you're practicing a particular sport or something in the gym where you want to work on more mobility for movement, then you can kind of create your own flow that's sort of specifically into that area to help you get more mobilization through the joints, you know, from that particular flow. Cool, okay, so let's get started. So to start with, all we want to do with every time we start, we're going to be putting pressure through the joints, through the muscles. So we want to do just basically a sort of joint warm up and just mobilize certain areas. So the first thing we're going to look to do is we're just going to warm and mobilize our wrists, because throughout a lot of the time we've got body weight into the hands, into the feet, all the time supporting our weight. So we need to make sure that the wrists, something that's often forgotten, are really well warmed up. This also transfers into things like jiu-jitsu and so on and so forth. So obviously a lot of the time you're using wrists and ankles with your feet and hands on the floor. So it's great to warm those up. So here's our first exercise. So we're going to just warm the wrists. So all I want you to do to start with is basically I just want you to rotate your wrists, and you're trying to get like a maximum, the largest sort of circle, the maximum range of movement that you can through each wrist. You can do two at the same time. Just starting to just circulate the hands, and you're going to go both directions. Nice and simple. Good stuff. Then you're going to join the fingers together, and then you're just going to rotate the wrists with the hands together again, trying to get that maximum range of movement. So we shouldn't be pushing it to where we're feeling pain, but you might be getting to the sort of edges of your range of motion where you sort of start to feel that little bit of discomfort. So just rotating, and then again change directions. You can see I'm keeping my elbows dropped and my shoulders relaxed. So it's just isolating the wrist joints. Perfect, nice stuff. Okay, just loosen off. So this time we're just going to basically create this sort of wave shape where my elbow goes high. You can see it flows through my wrist. I go through that range of movement on that wrist, and then I drop into the next wrist. My elbow goes high, the other one goes low, and I'm just rolling through, which is also stretching through my fingers, through the palms of my hand, and into the forearms a little bit too. A few times this way, a few times the other way. Remember, keep relaxed. Remember to breathe and finish off, shake out. Awesome. Right, so we've warmed that up. So we're going to get into a sort of almost into our four-point position now. But this time we're going to actually just keep our knees on the floor. So I'll go side on so you can see what I'm doing. I'll change my angles as we go. So don't worry if you can't quite see every single angle. I'll change for you. So basically I'm going to be on all fours. Now we need to start our position correctly. We need to make sure we've got our weight in the right area. So to start with, you've really got to make sure that your hands are underneath your shoulders, okay? So that means I don't want my hands too wide, I don't want my hands ahead of me, and I don't want my hands behind me so my shoulders are over the top of my hands and I've got this constant extension through my wrists, which is not good, okay? So I want to have my palms directly beneath my shoulders, which means my hands need to be shoulder width apart. You can see that from this setup, okay? And then I need to do the same thing with my knees, and they need to be hip width apart. So again, I don't want to be too wide like this, and I don't want to be too narrow like this, which is going to make me unstable. I want to make sure that everything runs in line. Okay, so that means my knees are going to be hip width apart and my hands are going to be shoulder width apart, okay, in this fixed position. Cool, so from that point, what we're going to do is we're then going to just work a little bit on warming the wrists a little bit further. So what we're going to do is we're just going to literally just lean forwards a little bit now, so my shoulders go beyond my hands, and then just loosen that off, go back, and then we're pushing forwards until we can feel that gentle stretch, and we're going back. Super simple, but it's a really nice way of warming up the wrists, just forwards and backwards. Do this a few times. And then quite simply, all we're going to do is just turn that hand around now so the fingers face back towards me. Now, if you can't get the flats of your palms to the floor to start with, that's okay. You can just start with them slightly up. So all you're going to do is you've got your weight in your knees and you're just going to lean forwards over the palms of your hands until you feel that sort of the end of that range of motion within the wrists. And then you can just rock your weight forwards and backwards again. You'll feel that stretch through the forearms. Forwards and backwards, gentle stretch. We're not forcing anything here. We're just warming up, getting ready for the exercise. So just from that different angle, so you can see, I've done one with my fingers forwards, and I've done one with my fingers facing backwards. Okay, so externally rotating the forearm, and then we're coming back to this position. Now what we're going to do is we're going to basically put the back of our palms on the floor, like so. Again, make sure you've got your weight in your knees to start with, so you're not just dropping all of your weight into the back of your hands and then you've got this sort of really severe stretch. So you're dropping your weight back into your knees a little bit so you can place those palms as flat as possible. And again, all we're going to do now is we're just going to gently circle over the tops of the hands, and we're trying to keep the arms nice and straight as well. So we're just circling, and then we're going back the other way, changing directions. So getting that stretch on the other side. So you should feel this through the forearm. We should be starting to warm up now. I hope you can feel that. Cool. Right, so let's start to warm up our shoulders a little bit now. So again, really simple. What we're going to do this time is we're in that sort of 4-point position, but with my knees down. Okay, and I've got my hands at shoulder width. I've got my knees at pelvis width or hip width apart. This time, all you're going to do is you're basically going to try and round the back by pushing the shoulder blades up towards the ceiling, straightening through the arms, so the arms are locked completely straight. You're trying to get your chest to concave and arch the back as much as possible. And then what I want you to do, keeping your arms completely straight still, I want you to try and keep that shape, but drop your shoulder, let your shoulders stay up, and then it's like you're trying to squeeze your shoulder blades together. And then as you push back up, like you're separating and stretching the shoulder blades. So you're dropping down, the shoulders come up, you've got this curve through that section of your shoulder blades, and then you're coming back up and rounding in the opposite direction. So we're just going up and down. So this isn't a rolling of the shoulders, it's just an up and down, trying to switch on the muscles in the thoracic area. Now you can turn that into a shoulder roll then, if you want to, and go both directions. That's fine too, but we're trying to go up and down just to get that range of movement through the back. This is great just for loosening off the back if you feel any tension from sitting at a desk or driving for long periods or anything like that. Movement's great anyway with cat and cow. Cool, so let's move on. So we're just going to quickly open up the shoulders a little bit now. So this time I do want you to widen your knees and put your feet, sort of the tops of your feet flat on the floor. And I want you to drop forward and stretch your arms forwards. It's like a yoga pose called child's pose, and it's great for loosening off the hips. But also then, as we stretch the fingertips forwards, we can start to lift the head, and we get this really nice stretch through the lats, through this part of the back here, the latissimus dorsi. So stretching forwards, we can relax down with our head down and touching the floor, and loosen off the hips and start that gentle stretch of the lats. But we can also then keep the palms down, keep everything locked down, but start to lift the head off the floor, and you'll start to feel that extra stretch through the shoulders. Really nice. And you just hold this for 20 or 30 seconds just to loosen that pose off. Bringing the hands back in, bringing your knees back to that pelvis width. We're just gonna loosen off the legs a little bit as well. So that means all we're gonna do is post up into what's called a downward dog position, like so. And then all I want you to do is just lift and lower the heels, so you can just loosen off the backs of the legs, because we're going to be holding, a lot of the time we're holding some isometric movements while we're practicing these flow sort of base movements, these base sort of postures. As we practice, we have to hold that posture to make sure we're getting it right. So it's isometric, which means a fixed position. So we want to make sure everything's warmed up, everything's ready for the exercise, and you can just loosen and relax down. Cool, so you should feel a little bit warm now, which is the idea. That's our warm-up. So we're going to look at this 4-point posture, okay? So the 4-point posture, we're pretty much done. The only difference is I'm going to have my knees off the floor, okay? So from the side, it's going to look like this. As I have just been doing already, I set my hands and I make sure my shoulders are going to be directly above my hands, and I'm trying to keep my arms nice and straight. I make sure my knees are hip width apart, and also now, because I'm going to have to put my weight onto my toes, I have my toes curled under and I have my toes also at that hip width. So basically we pretty much got a straight line running through here. If you've got slightly broader shoulders, your hands might be slightly wider than your hips and vice versa, but we're trying to keep a fairly straight line from front to back, okay? So we've got the palms in the correct position, my fingers are spread out to give me that extra balance and grip to the floor. I have my knees underneath my hips, I have my toes in line with my knees, and all I'm going to do, keeping those arms locked straight, is I'm just going to lift the knees off the floor a few centimeters. And what you'll see from the side view is I'll have this foot parallel to the floor, and I'm just going to hold that posture and breathe for a few seconds. So you can just feel what that's like. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing into the floor, and I'm also squeezing my shoulder blades together a little bit, and I'm engaging my core muscles through the stomach as well. So my abdomen, squeezing that a little bit, and then just relax down. So that's our 4-point posture, okay? Super straightforward. So we're gonna do a little test now, because of course, if we're doing mobility flow, that means that we don't want to actually be staying still for long periods of time. We can hold a posture which feels quite nice, and we can add strength through doing that. But we also want to flow into the next movement, and it becomes this kind of beautiful flowing movement which you can express yourself. And one of the things you can do is you can do it to music, and it starts to become almost like a sort of self-expressive dance. It's really good fun to play with. So we need to be able to move. So to be able to move, we can't obviously have 4 fixed points on the ground. We have to be able to move lift one of those points up to be able to move it in whatever direction we want to travel, okay? So if I'm facing towards you, so you can see my hands a little bit easier, if I'm in this 4-point position now, which I'm holding now in that position, my arms are straight, my fingers are spread out, my knees are just off the floor, so my shins are horizontal to the floor, and I've got this nice strong posture, and I'm tensing my core slightly, so everything's nice and fixed. Now I can't move from this position unless I'm willing to lift something up. So what we're going to practice is lifting up the hand, which means I have to basically get my weight over my knees, over my feet, and over the other hand to be able to lift this right hand. Let's say if I start with my right hand and I want to lift it up, I have to be able to change my weight off that hand to lift it. That's the key rule. If you want to move something and you've got gravity pulling you to the floor, you have to actually be able to move your weight away from that and make it light to be able to lift it up. Okay, so we're going to do that, but what we don't want to do is the obvious thing, which is overcompensate our movement and lose our position to be able to do it. And what I mean by that is I don't want to be able to have to do this, where you can see that my torso starts to twist, my knee comes higher away from the floor and the other knee is lower, and I'm changing the shape of my body to be able to lift that hand. So the challenge to start with for you, and this is something you can practice this week to build strength and actually be able to sort of find that balance, and it does take a little bit of time to find that balance to get it right, is I want you to be able to just lift your hand high enough to be able to slip like a piece of paper under it. So maybe a couple of millimeters, a centimetre at the most, because if we're trying to lift it too high, we're just not going to do it. And also, I don't want you to bend your arm to do it either. So I want you to try and keep your arm straight as you do it, and then just be able to lift it ever so slightly. So if I go into that position, that 4-point posture, like so, okay, all I'm going to do, and you'll see it's quite subtle, is I basically move the weight slowly, and then I pick the hand up, and then I drop it back down again. I can do it on the other side. I can slowly shift my weight. It's very subtle. Lift the hand up and drop it back down. And I can do the same with my feet, right? It's a bit easier with your feet if you're doing them individually. I can pick my left foot up. So if I come this way so you can see my left foot, I can pick my left foot up so that's ready to move. Or I can pick my right foot up so that's ready to move. And again, it doesn't need to be a big movement. It just needs to be a small, subtle movement enough so I can pick it up and move it somewhere, which means we can start to actually get in transit with these postures. We can start to move in any direction that we want. So try that for a second. Have a quick go. Pause the film if you want to, and just have a quick go at lifting one hand and then changing your weight and lifting the other hand. Hold it for a couple of seconds and try with your feet as well, which is much easier, but try it for a couple of seconds and then a couple of seconds on the other foot. So pause now. Cool, so hopefully you've done that, okay? So what we're going to do now is we want to try and move opposite hands and opposite feet, okay? So we're literally lifting one hand and then the opposite leg, which means we can start to travel forwards or backwards. So let me give you an example of this. I'll do it from the front to start with. So I'm in my 4-point posture. This time I'm going to lift my right hand and my left leg at the same time. So that means I have to make sure I get my balance properly over my left hand and my right foot. And I'm also going to push into the ground with both of those supporting positions, my hand and my foot, as much as possible to get that drive to make sure I'm supporting myself and make sure the muscles are engaged, okay? So I get into that position, I push with my left hand and I push with my right foot so I can now lift my right and left leg. So now I'm in that balanced position which I can hold and then I can place it back down. I do the same on the opposite side now. So I push with my right hand into the ground, I push with my left foot into the ground so I can lift my left hand and my right foot. And you can see it's a small movement. I'm not lifting a lot, it's subtle. And then I place it back down again and I can lower down and rest. So pause the video and I want you to try and do those opposite sides now. You'll feel it's a little bit more shaky and a little bit more challenging. And I want you to try and lift them at exactly the same time and drop them at exactly the same time. All right, have a go. Pause the video. Cool, so hopefully you've tried that, you've paused the video and you had a go. So now let's look at starting to actually move forwards and backwards. So all that is now is that we actually just, when we lift that opposite limb, okay, the opposite hand, the opposite foot, we just then move them, instead of just lifting them straight up and holding it, we just move them forwards a little bit. Now we don't want to be going through massive movements, okay, so we don't want to be looking to sort of, to start with especially, because what you'll do is, if you move too quickly or if you move too, your movements are too big, you'll lose the posture, you'll lose the position, and all of a sudden you'll start to rock and lean, and that basically means that the movements won't be tight, they won't be precise, and you'll start to lose balance basically. So this time I'm not going to do this, do this massive movement where I'm falling into my hand. Every single time you pick your foot up or you place your foot or hand down, it has to be with control, and it has to be because you choose to do it, not because you fall into the movement. So I should be able to say pause at pretty much any point, and you should be able to just stay exactly where you are without falling or collapsing over. So I'm going to go into my 4-point posture. Here I am, hands underneath the shoulders, trying to keep my arms as straight as possible. My knees are in line with my hips, my toes are in line with my knees. I lift my left hand and my right foot up, I put them forward slightly and I place them down. I then basically do the same on the opposite side, and I can bring them level to reset, or I can go slightly beyond, again, no more than a hand's distance. So my heel of my hand here is now in line with my fingers. So I'm only going my length of my hand forwards. That's a small movement, okay? And whatever I move my hand forwards, my foot matches that distance. So I'm in that 4-point posture. I lift my left hand and my right foot. And again, if I say stop, you can see I've not got my hand, I can move it, and I'm not losing balance. I can place it down with care, and then I can basically move forwards with the other one, place it down with care, move forwards, place it down with care, come backwards to that reset position, and lower my knees. So that's how we're going to move forward. So again, pause the video, have a go at moving. Again, remembering that we're never moving more than one hand's distance forwards and backwards, and the foot on the opposite side is moving the same amount of distance. So you're always keeping that very precise position. Whatever you move forwards, the back covers, and we can get back into that original 4-point position whenever we want to. Have a go. Okay, cool, so that's forwards. So let's have a little look at backwards. So we're in that 4-point position. Same principle applies this time. Instead of moving forwards, I'm going to move my hand back, again, just so my fingers are in line with the heel of my hand. So I'm never moving too much forwards and backwards, and of course my foot will do exactly the same thing. It will move the same amount of distance backwards. Okay, so if I start forwards ever so slightly, I go into my 4-point posture. Here we go. All of my positioning is good. My hands are under my shoulders, knees in line with my hips, toes in line with my knees. Now I'm pushing into the floor, and I'm going to lift my right hand and my left foot, and I go backwards. I set, I push with those hands that I've just stepped down, so I can lift the other two, and I move backwards. Move backwards, move backwards, move backwards. And you can see, if I do it towards you, forwards and backwards now, just quickly, you can see that there's not a lot of rocking from one side to the other. The movements are small, I'm not lifting my hands or my feet high, and I'm not overcompensating by rocking from side to side or giving too much twist. I'm trying to keep in a nice straight line, nice and compact. And I've got some tension through the core as I'm doing it, but I'm relaxed and I'm breathing, okay? So I'm not holding my breath. So here we go. So I move forwards, you can see. If you watch my shoulders and my hips, there's very little movement as I come forwards. And it should feel a bit like a sort of cat prowling. You're dropping your hands and your feet down really softly, almost like you don't want anyone to hear. You don't want, you're sort of prowling on a prey, coming forwards, coming backwards. Nice and slowly, nice and steady. At any point I can say freeze, I can stop, and then carry on. Backwards, keeping my hands underneath my shoulders all the time, apart from when that hand goes out. And I come back to that square position, relax the knees down, and relax off. Cool. Now if you've been doing it that long, you probably feel it in your wrists and forearms. So feel free at any point, if you're starting to feel that tense up, you're getting forearm burn or anything like that, just go through those mobility drills, rotating the wrists, rotating mobility through here, and you can obviously do the ones we've just done as well. Okay, that all makes sense, cool. So the other thing we can do then is we can move laterally. So we've got our forwards and backwards. Laterally is exactly the same, apart from we're going out to the side. So we're going to move to the right and to the left. Same thing, the only difference is we're moving a different plane of movement, but we're still going to only move the hand the width of the palm this time. So again, we're not reaching really far and then overcompensating, being off balance or not having control. We're going to do a subtle movement, a smaller movement, okay? So I set in my 4-point posture. This time I'm going to move same hand, same foot to the side. So here we go. Step, and then I reset into that shoulder width. Step, shoulder width. Step, shoulder width. Same the other way. Step, shoulder width. Step, try and get your weight over one side first. So I've got my weight into my right hand and my right foot as much as possible so I can then lift and step. Now it's going to be harder than that forwards and backwards, but try not to move too much and try not to rock too much as you move. So step, 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 left and right, left, left. Always finishing in that finished position, dropping down. That's a tougher one, have a go, keep practicing it. And again, if you need to stretch out or anything at any point, just do that. Cool, crack on. Okay, so if you've tried all that, you should be feeling pretty hot. You should be feeling tested, your balance, some of your coordination. You might find it challenging if you struggle with coordination of movements, but the idea is we're trying to move everything at the same time, so we're really coordinating the movements. Not only does it look good, but it actually is really, once you start to flow, it means that everything's in the right place when you go flowing into the next position. Otherwise you can start to just get lost and it becomes a mess. Whereas if we're starting to actually flow through into other movements, whatever that might be, you're always back. See, I've set into that position. I've set into, this is a position. I'm here, here's a position. So it all looks like it's in transit, but really it's all from set positions back into that 4-point posture, which is one of the key positions that you're going to start and finish from. Cool. Okay, so you've just seen a little bit of what I want to challenge you with now. So once you practice that moving forwards and backwards, here's your flow challenge for the week. So you need to nail those first bits first, from that 4-point position, being able to move forwards, backwards, left and right. So that's key to get that, because otherwise we won't be able to get the more intermediate and advanced stuff later. But I want you to be able to have a little flow that you can practice, okay? If you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner or martial artist or something like that, you'll find this super useful because actually it'll make sense. It's called an under switch, but also we'll call it a technical stand-up or a sit-through in jiu-jitsu. And from this 4-point position, obviously this could be almost as if we're in a turtle position, or we're just getting up, basically posting to get up, or we've rolled onto our back, but we don't want to get our back taken, we want to re-guard, then we're going to sit through into this under switch position like this. So I'm in this 4-point posture. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my left hand nice and straight. I'm going to basically keep my right foot on the floor, but it's going to pivot on the toe, and I'm going to turn, pushing this left foot underneath my body, driving with the heel towards the wall. So you can see my leg is parallel to the floor, my heel is driving towards the wall as if I'm kicking through here, and then my fingers are pointing backwards, and then this hand that came through from here, I'm just tucking in to my waist so it's nice and tidy with my fingers pointing up, okay? And again, in martial arts sense or anything like that, this can be protecting the head as well. So if someone's actually trying to strike, we can cover the head on either side as we sit through, and then we can just come back to that 4-point position. So that's going to be 4-point position to under switch, okay? That's what that movement's called. So here we go. So we take our 4-point position. Make sure you've got a good posture, everything's as it should be, and then we're going to pivot on the right foot, keep our balance on our left hand, swivel through, drive that heel to the wall, tuck that other hand in, so my right hand is tucked into my waist with my fingers pointing to the sky. You can see my right foot is flat on the floor, facing the same direction as my foot, and my left hand is supporting my weight, and then I'm going to just bring it back through and relax down. So have a go just breaking that down. The same will then apply on the other side. So I will literally be 4-point position. I'll pivot through this way. Again, my leg is parallel. I'm driving my heel towards the wall. My left hand is now tucked in. The elbow is touching towards my waist. My fingers are pointing up, and then I come back through. So you should then be able to practice those two movements flowing from one side to the other. So 4-point position, under switch, right, under switch, left leg, under switch, right leg. You can see every time I'm coming back to the right position, my hands are pointing forward, my fingers are pointing forwards, my hands are shoulder width, my shoulders are over my hands, my knees are hip width, and my toes are in line with my knees. So here, straight back through, a good 4-point position. Under switch, a good 4-point position. Now it's tempting with these movements to go really, really fast, But the problem with going really, really fast is you won't have control. So the challenge again to start with when you're doing your flow is to have the same tempo that's nice and smooth and controlled all the way through. That will really challenge your balance, and it will really help you notice where your sort of faults are, so where your imbalances are, where you're wobbling. Perhaps you'll get a chance to notice, oh, maybe my hand's not quite in the right place, or am I leading with my heel, or am I pushing out with my toe? Is my leg parallel to the floor? All those questions, you know, is my hand tucked in with my fingers pointing to the sky? When I come back to 4-point position, are my hands too wide, or is one hand a bit skew width? Are my knees too wide? Are they horizontal to the floor? All those things you want to be constantly kind of checking, little checkpoints in your positions all the way through to make sure you get that right. So one last time, the flow of the week will be from that 4-point position and being able to flow from one under switch to the other under switch and back into that 4-point position. So let me show you one more time, and you can just do a few reps of it. So there we go. 1, 2. So 4-point position into left under switch, 4-point position into right under switch, flowing from one side back to that 4-point position to the other side, finishing off, relaxing down. And to finish, just stretch off your wrists exactly the same as the warm-up and enjoy. Have a play with it, see how you find it. I hope you like it, and I'll add something in for you next week. Have a great week. Speak to you soon, guys. Bye.